Hey guys, welcome to the Sports Note for Wednesday, September 28th. I told you I was going to be seeing a lot of you guys this week between the Wise Guys show this past Saturday, the one that we actually did on Monday, and also today. And we've also got something else in the pipe that'll probably get to you guys before the weekend. We're actually talking a little bit of baseball again, and there's going to be a little bit of a correlation between today's video and what you guys saw on Monday. We actually had a lot of news come out of Miami really since the early part of the week, and none of it's good. We all know that the Marlins are terrible. We know that the Marlins are now have actually hit 90 losses. They've been eliminated from the playoffs for weeks. They are 32 and a half games out in the National League East, which is actually going to come right down to the wire. And last night's game between the Marlins and the New York Mets actually has major playoff implications here, and we're going to see that here as we go on through this entry. But the Marlins actually announced back on Sunday that their agreement with manager Don Mattingly was not going to be renewed, as his contract slated to expire when the regular season ends a week from today on October the 4th, right before and then the playoffs are going to actually begin a couple of days thereafter. Mattingly is 61, has actually been at the helm in Miami for 7 years, but they've only been above 500 one time, and that was a 31-29 record in 2020, which actually ended up getting Mattingly the National League Manager of the Year. The Marlins got into the playoffs, won the wild card round against the Chicago Cubs, and then were promptly not, tossed aside by the Atlanta Braves in the divisional round. The Marlins have no payroll. They've got the fifth lowest payroll in all of baseball. It's under $100 million. Yet, when you look at the bottom five payrolls, you got Oakland at the bottom at just over 60, Baltimore at 64 at 29th, the Cleveland Guardians at 82 or 28, the Pittsburgh Pirates are at 85, and then the Marlins are 96. Look at those names there. The Guardians have already clinched the American League Central Division Championship, and the Orioles are still mathematically in the playoff hunt, and we're trying to chase down the Yankees in the American League East for the top spot just about a month ago. But we know that the Pirates are routinely bad. We know that the A's right now, people just don't care. And we talked earlier this year that there's talk, could the A's stay in Oakland? Could their new ballpark get built? Because they want out of Alameda Coliseum badly. The Marlins just moved into their new park in 2012, so they're not going anywhere. We remember the issue that happened with them with the Derek Jeter ownership issue. We remember that god-awful statue that was out in center field. But Mattingly not coming back now throws 2023 into even more disarray, because you're not going to contend in that division, especially with the Mets, Phillies, and Braves all sitting atop, and a very distinct possibility that all three are going to end up in the playoffs. Two of them are already guaranteed to be in. We know that you've got to actually find somebody to try and right this sinking ship, because, again, 4 times since Mattingly's been there, they've achieved 90 losses or more. And they actually had a 105 loss season a few years ago, which was the second worst in franchise history. And let's also keep in mind, this is still a franchise that isn't even 25 years old, yet has 2 World Series championships and only has 3 playoff appearances, and Mattingly's was one of them. Jack McKeon got them to a championship in 2003 over the Yankees. We remember that one. Brad Penny shutting down the Yankees in Yankee Stadium in Game 6. And then Jim Leyland and the Marlins and Wayne Huizenga basically buying a championship over the Cleveland Indians back in 1997 with the infamous Craig Counsell walk-off off of Jose Mesa's glove. And again, you cannot tell me that was not a store-bought championship. That was That was probably worse than really anything the Yankees have done. But we not only is Mattingly on his way out, he wanted to basically get his 2 cents worth with what happened last night. The Marlins are up 6-4 going into the bottom of the eighth inning in Citi Field against the Mets. The Mets at that point were 1 game up in the National League East on the Atlanta Braves. Again, both have already clinched and are in the playoffs, which again are going to start next week. The Mets at one point had a 10.5 game lead back in June, and yeah, I am going to razz my co-host on the Wise Guy Show, Mike Martinez, for that. And that's going to be a dead heat going all the way down to the end, but we're going to touch on what's going to happen with that one and the ramifications here at the end of this show. Essentially, we could end under the playoffs, may not end up starting on time, and I think a lot of you know as to why. But anyway, Miami is trotting out pitcher Richard Blyer, and he's pitching to Pete Alonso. We all know that Alonso is a very dangerous hitter. Alonso had gotten his 40th home run earlier in the game. As a matter of fact, I want to say, I think I might have actually, well, no, I was actually on the phone with Mike the other night. It might have been actually it wasn't last night, it was the night before. And we got a programming update here for you guys as well, but I'm getting off topic. But we, again, know how dangerous Alonso is. A two-time home run derby champion. He was on the precipice of hitting 40 with 2 down in the inning already. Jeff McNeil hits an infield single, is on first. Alonso steps in on the 1-0 pitch, the 2-0 pitch, and then the 3-1 pitch. Not so much, balls or intentional walks or anything, but the umpiring crew called balks on Blyer, and basically that means that Nelson was able to come all the way around and score and cut the game to 6-4 at that point. Now, the Mets would not get any closer and that would actually be your final score. And what it ended up doing is it ended up dropping the Mets into a first-place tie with the Atlanta Braves. Now, the Mets actually have the tiebreaker, as they've got the better head-to-head record against the Braves themselves, but this actually could be, if this is something that comes back and bites the Mets in the ass, assuming that the currently scheduled weekend series in Atlanta between the Mets and Braves, and right now, again, that's very contingent on the hurricane that's actually just hit landfall in Florida within the last couple of hours. What's going to happen with that? But the idea of throwing 3 balks in the same at bat has not been done since 1900, and I believe I saw the stat on ESPN that only 6 other pitchers have thrown 3 balks in an inning. Again, this was 3 in the same at bat over the course of 4 or 5 pitches. The rule is that the minute you argue a balk, you're tossed. So immediately Mattingly got tossed when he came out to argue the case for his player. The letter of the law with the balk is that the pitcher must come to a complete and total stop before beginning their delivery. It looked like, and you can actually see where the umpires had made this call on the field, that it was kind of a bang-bang, that it almost looked like Blyer could have quick-pitched Alonso, which they immediately throw out, and typically they call that an automatic ball if there's nobody on base. If there's somebody on base, it's a balk. But when you slow down and you kind of look at the replay, it does show that Blyer did come to a complete stop. Might not have been as long as the umpiring crew wanted to give him credit for. But again, Mattingly comes out, gets tossed. Blyer's able to get Alonso to ground out to end the inning, and then starts jawing with the umpires, and then gets tossed himself. And we all know that Blyer actually has a little bit of a reputation of being a hothead. This is the first time Blyer has over 300 major league appearances throughout the course of his career. He's 35 years old. He's making $5.5 million on the Marlins in a relief role right now, but he's never committed a balk in his career. And then the umpiring crew gives him three in the same at bat. I can absolutely understand why he wanted to get his 2 cents worth. He goes back to the dugout. He gets tossed in a game against the Nationals last July. Blyer actually hit a batter, but immediately appealed over to first base along with his catcher, claiming that the Washington batter swung at the pitch, which would negate the hit by pitch. And then Mattingly immediately comes out, pulls Blyer, and then Blyer decides to start chewing out the umpires from the dugout, proceeds to flip one of them off, and immediately gets tossed. So again, we know that Blyer's got quite a bit of a temper on him, but if I were him, he had already thrown 16 pitches in the inning. Now, granted, none of these were with anybody on base, but I can't imagine that there's that much different in his delivery that would have necessitated them calling a balk. And because with the game at 6-3, Alonso, even if he hits his 41st home run in that at-bat, doesn't mean anything because there's still 2 down and the Marlins are still leading the game by 1. So the idea of you don't want to say that the umpiring crew had an axe to grind, but there's a caveat here. Back on Monday, we talked about the umpiring crew in Kansas City tossing out 2 players even before the game started. That was Luke Weaver of the Kansas City Royals and Robbie Ray of the Seattle Mariners, because they engaged in the ridiculous anthem stare down that actually caused the game to be delayed starting for a minute or two. And then they turn around just a couple of days later, and again, Seattle is currently in a wild card position, and trying to lock that down here in the next couple of days. And then for this exact same umpiring crew, for the other 2 members of that umpiring crew who did not throw out the first 2, the 2 in Kansas City, the other 2 end up being directly involved in getting Blyer and Mattingly tossed out of this one. So now this umpiring crew has got games since Sunday. This is 3 games already this week, and they've thrown out 4 individuals, and both of these games have playoff implications. Again, with the Mets trying to win the National League East and get that first round bye, and then the Mariners trying to lock down a wild card position, because right now they could be on the road against Cleveland, or they could end up hosting the other wild card round in the American League. So the idea of the commissioner's office really starting to look at this crew and see what is going on here, where all these players are getting tossed. Were the calls justified in Citi Field at the Mets game last night? Still remains to be seen. Let's actually see what the reports come out and say when the umpiring crew gets graded. The 2 that got tossed out in Seattle absolutely should have been tossed out. There's no question about that. But it's going to be very, very interesting to see if that loss last night comes back and bites the Mets in the ass, especially again with the idea that they're going to finish the season in that 3-game set against Atlanta, down in Atlanta, and who knows when it's going to take place because of, again, the hurricane touching down. Are they going to be able to get it in? Are they going to have to move it to a different location? Are they going to have to postpone it and actually start the playoffs next weekend instead of actually having the playoffs start next Wednesday or Thursday? But let me know what you guys think down in the comment box below. Let me hit me up on Twitter or Facebook if you're interested. Wise Guy Sports Show 1-year anniversary is 2.5 weeks away, and we've actually got another sports note in the pipe. I definitely again want to get that out to all you guys here by the weekend. We're going to touch a little NBA on this one, I believe. And tomorrow night on Mike's Big Rican on Sports Channel will actually be his monthly baseball show, and I'll actually be taking part in that, albeit in kind of an abbreviated type role, because again, baseball is not my forte. You guys all know that, but it'll probably be a little bit of a playoff preview. I believe we're going to be joined by our Wise Guys brethren, our unofficial third member, Alex Ruiz from Row 7, and we're also going to be joined by Willie from the Shakeback Media Group. It's going to be a lot of fun. We may actually have another guest involved, and we hope you guys will tune in and enjoy. And if not, again, I will actually see you guys later on this week with another sports note, and we will see you guys in a little over 2 weeks with the Wise Guys anniversary show. Take care, and we will see you all very, very soon.